Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive.
Yeah.
We've got another fascinating topic to explore today.
Right.
And it's one of those concepts that, on the surface, it might seem pretty straightforward, but the more you delve into it, the more you realize just how deep and multi-layered it really is.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And that's what we're going to be tackling today.
Okay.
We're talking about dhikr,
Dhikr.
remembrance.
Right.
And our goal today is really to go beyond that kind of like everyday understanding of what dhikr is and to really grasp its significance,
Yeah.
how it impacts a believer's life.
Hmm.
And luckily, we've got a treasure trove of insights to draw on from a variety of sources.
Yeah, a lot of beautiful things have been said about Dhikr.
So let's jump right in.
Okay.
When we first encounter the term dhikr, you know what usually comes to mind?
I think most people would probably immediately think of, reciting certain phrases, right?
Yeah.
Like subhanallah or alhamdulillah.
Okay, so those repeated expressions.
Yeah.
But before we even get to that, let's take a step back.
Okay.
What does the word dhikr actually mean in Arabic?
Well, the root of the word means to mention or to remember.
To mention or to remember?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, a great example is the story of Prophet Yusuf when he says,
Mention me to your Lord.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So it's about keeping something present in someone's awareness.
Absolutely. It's not just about saying the words, but really about making that conscious effort to keep something in mind.
So it's not just like a purely verbal act.
Right.
There's like a deeper internal dimension.
Yeah, and that's where the istilahi meaning comes in.
Istilahi.
Yeah, the technical religious meaning.
Okay.
And that's defined as istithha al-shay fi al-qalb.
Bringing something to mind in the heart.
Exactly. So it's not just the tongue that's involved, but really the engagement of the heart.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it really emphasizes the importance of mindfulness in dhikr.
It's not just going through the motions.
No, it's about being present.
Being present. Right. Now we've got a pretty powerful illustration of this in our sources.
Oh, yes, the story of Antar in the middle of battle.
Wow. Okay.
Imagine the scene, swords clashing, spears flying.
Like intense chaos.
And in that moment, Antara says, I remembered you while the spears were drinking from me.
That is such a vivid image.
It is.
That even in that kind of extreme situation, his thoughts were completely focused on his beloved.
Yeah, it shows the power of remembrance to really captivate the heart.
Now, this makes me think of a verse from Surah Al-Ham.
Oh, yeah.
Where Allah instructs the believers to remember him intensely when facing difficulty.
Right. It says, he was getting comes canal. I may have some conjes canal. I was like, haga. Conjes canal.
So, O you who have believed, when you meet a company in battle, stand firm and remember Allah much, that you may be successful.
Powerful words.
So while the focus of remembrance might be different, like for Antara, it was his beloved.
Right.
But for believers, it's Allah. That underlying principle of constant presence of mind.
It remains the same.
It's fascinating.
It is, and it speaks to how deeply remembrance is connected to love and attachment. And there's this beautiful line from the poets that captures this so well.
Okay.
They say, Shak the minwe sonan la, shak feel lost shunk your soul, no sun has risen nor set, except that your remembrance is connected to my breaths.
Wow. So the beloved is like woven into their very being.
Yeah, it's a constant presence.
Always on their mind.
Always.
And it's interesting how in Surah Al-Imran, true believers are described as those who remember Allah.
Yes. Those who remember Allah as standing or sitting or lying on their sides and give thought to the creation of the heavens and the earth.
So dhikr isn't confined to like specific times or postures?
Exactly. It's about cultivating that continuous state of remembrance.
No matter what you're doing.
Yeah, whether you're walking, eating, working, sleeping, it's about keeping Allah in your heart throughout the day.
So it's more than just like an action you perform.
Right.
It's a way of life.
It's a how.
A how.
Yeah, a state of being, a state of love and continuous muayashat.
Living with the remembrance of Allah.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
And I think sometimes we forget that dhikr is this deep and constant thing.
Yeah, we can sometimes reduce it to just reciting phrases without really understanding its true depth.
Exactly. And that brings us to another important question.
Okay, what's that?
Why is dhikr considered so vital?
Okay.
Even superior to other acts of worship?
That's a really important question.
And I think, a key point here is that we need to move beyond just inheriting understandings
Right.
of dhikr and other acts of worship,
Yeah, we shouldn't just blindly follow what we've been taught, but really try to understand the deeper meanings behind these acts.
engaging with them on a profound level. And when we do that,
Mm-hmm.
we start to see the elevated position of dhikr,
Absolutely,
as
yeah.
mentioned alongside, prayer,
Supplication.
the Quran,
Right.
as one of the four essential shalasat,
The four sittings.
the core ways we connect with Allah.
Mm-hmm. Those are like the pillars of our spiritual lives.
Wow, four crucial engagements.
Prayer, supplication, Quran, and Dhikr.
And you're saying that dhikr is actually dominant.
Yeah, and there's a beautiful verse in Surah Taha that points to this.
Okay.
It says, Hupik bisnatse.
Establish prayer for my remembrance.
So the very purpose of prayer is highlighted as being for the remembrance of Allah.
Wow, that's a huge statement
It is.
about its core importance.
It really shows how central Dhikr is to our faith.
And we also see dhikr woven into other acts of worship,
Oh, yeah, definitely.
like the takbir during fasting,
Yeah, saying Allahu
but the
Akbar.
constant dhikr during Hajj,
Mhm.
and even the Quran itself is considered the best form of dhikr.
Right, the very words of Allah.
SubhanAllah, it's like this golden thread running through all our acts of devotion.
It connects them all back to the fundamental purpose of remembering Allah.
So it's like the underlying essence
Exactly.
that permeates all our worship.
Beautiful way to put it.
And here's another interesting point.
Okay.
While other acts of worship have specific prescribed times,
Mm-hmm. Like prayer 5 times a day.
dhikr has no limitations.
Yeah. Aisha, R.A., said that the Prophet, PBUH, remembered Allah in all his circumstances.
All these circumstances.
Every single moment.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is.
Like no matter what he was doing,
Exactly.
he was remembering Allah.
Yes, and we have so many examples of this.
Okay, like what?
Like when he was dressing, when he entered or left the restroom,
Mm-hmm.
the marketplace, the mosque,
Wow.
when he was writing, even when his mount stumbled.
So his entire life was saturated with the remembrance of Allah.
It was.
That's inspiring.
It is. It should motivate us to find ways to integrate Dhikr into our own daily routines.
No matter how small or mundane they might seem.
Exactly.
So we've talked about the meaning of dhikr,
Mm-hmm.
its importance,
Right.
how it's woven into other acts of worship.
Yeah.
Now I want to talk about the fruits,
Okay.
the rewards of dhikr for the heart.
Yeah, the benefits are immense.
Okay, what are some of them?
Well, Dhikr elevates the heart.
Elevates the heart.
It brings tranquility, strengthens the bond with Allah.
So it's about nurturing that connection.
Exactly.
And it's not just about fulfilling an obligation.
No, it's about cultivating inner peace
Inner peace.
and a stronger connection with Allah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool for spiritual well-being.
Now, you mentioned earlier that dhikr requires purification of the heart,
Yeah.
frequent dua.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just about our own intentions.
Right.
It's also about divine assistance.
Yeah, tawfiq.
Tawfiq.
Mm-hmm.
So while saying subhanallah is easy,
It is.
achieving true tawfiq
Right.
requires recognizing that it's ultimately a gift from Allah.
Yeah. Our ability to remember him consistently is a blessing from him. And there's a beautiful hadith where the Prophet, PBUH, advises Mu'ad ibn Jabal
Okay.
to say after every prayer, "Oh, Allah, help me in your remembrance, your gratitude, and in performing your worship in an excellent manner."
That prayer itself emphasizes that even dhikr is granted through Allah's aid.
So it's a constant asking
It is.
for his help.
Yeah, we need to acknowledge our dependence on him.
That's so powerful.
And the Quran also emphasizes this.
How so?
Well, it stresses in Surah Al-Asab and Surah Al-Jumu'ah.
Okay.
And it's interesting that this emphasis on sheer frequency isn't placed on other acts of worship in the same way.
Even though they have their own merits.
Right, like prayer, charity, fasting.
So there's something unique about the importance of frequent remembrance.
There is. It's something we really need to reflect on.
Now let's talk about how this constant dhikr impacts the heart.
We have a powerful example in the Prophet's reaction
Yes.
to the concluding verses of Surah Al-Imran.
The verses about the creation of the heavens and the earth.
Shiofasu Setchio.
Right.
Aisha, R.A., narrates that he cried throughout the night
Until morning.
when these verses were revealed.
Yeah, it was a very powerful moment.
And those verses describe
Mhm.
those who remember Allah constantly
Right.
and contemplate his creation.
Exactly.
So his reaction speaks volumes about the power of these verses.
He does.
And Imam Mujahid explained
Yes.
that the heartfelt
The
dua
supplications in those verses.
stemmed from the believer's constant dhikr and tafakkur.
Their contemplation.
So the continuous remembrance nurtured a heart that was responsive to the divine.
It did.
So it's like a cycle.
Yeah.
Constant remembrance fueling deeper contemplation.
And that leads to more heartfelt prayer.
It's beautiful.
It is a beautiful upward spiral.
And the Quran describes the effect of dhikr on the heart. At the beginning of Surah Al-Anfal,
It says, Kanathala. Halanfa.
the believers are only those who, when Allah is mentioned, their hearts become fearful and awe.
Powerful words.
Do our hearts experience this washal?
That fear mixed with reverence.
When we remember Allah,
That's the question we need to ask ourselves.
it's a potent point for introspection.
It is.
And the hadith about the 7 who will be shaded by Allah
On the Day of Judgment.
mentions, a man who remembered Allah in private and his eyes overflowed with tears.
Now, this word kalyan,
Yeah,
it has two interpretations.
right.
One is being alone physically,
Away from people.
and the other
Is being alone in the heart.
even if you're surrounded by people.
Yeah. Your heart is empty of everything except Allah
Both point to a deep level of sincerity.
and connection.
When was the last time we cried from the remembrance of Allah?
That's a question we should all ask ourselves. It's easy to get caught up in the busyness of life and lose that connection.
And we all experience those ebbs and flows in our faith.
Right. Some days we feel very connected.
Yeah,
Other days, not so much.
exactly.
And the story of Hansal al-Sadi is really comforting here.
Oh, yes.
He felt like a hypocrite.
Because his spiritual state fluctuated,
When he was with the Prophet, PBUH,
his faith was strong.
but when he returned to his family,
It would dip.
and even Abu Bakr, RA, had a similar experience.
He did.
So it's normal to feel these fluctuations.
Yeah, it's a reminder that we're human.
And the Prophet, PBUH, told Hanzala,
Yeah.
Oh, Hansal, if you were to remain in the same state as you are with me, the angels would shake hands with you in the streets.
Wow, what an elevated state.
It is.
And in another narration,
Mhm.
it's clarified that this state is linked to Dhikr.
Continuous dhikr keeps the heart alive and connected, so it's a way of sustaining our spiritual well-being.
It is.
It's not just a practice,
It's a lifeline.
a lifeline.
Yeah.
And the Prophet, PBUH,
Mhm.
said that the one who remembers Allah is like the living.
And the one who doesn't is like the dead.
That's a stark comparison.
It is.
And some righteous women said,
Mm-hmm.
Orpheus, yeah, wushes your show. You, also, usa, you, yea. Glory be to you. How difficult is the path for one whom you are not his guide, and how desolate is the path for one whom you are not his companion.
So we need that connection with Allah.
We do. It's essential for our journey.
And Ibn al-Qayyim said,
Yes.
Uso yesh yashu. Yufukwai could me. Nothing systemai.
Whoever attaches his heart to other than Allah will be punished by it, inevitably.
So placing excessive attachment on people or things
Instead of Allah.
ultimately leads to turmoil.
It does.
And true peace is found in intimacy with Allah.
Once with Allah.
Friends with Allah.
Yeah. That's where we find true comfort.
Absolutely.
And Ibn al-Jawzi adds, will show.
A sign of ruin is finding comfort solely in people.
Wow. And he also said,
Yeah.
if you find yourself seeking comfort only in people and feeling lonely in solitude, then know that you are not yet truly fit for Allah.
That's pretty strong.
It is, but it's a wake-up call.
We need to cultivate that inner connection with Allah.
Yes, that's where true peace lies.
And in contrast, the Hadith speaks of the blessings of gatherings of Dhikr.
Yeah. Sakina, tranquility.
Rama, mercy.
The presence of angels.
And Allah mentions those present.
To his angels.
Wow, what an honor.
Imagine being mentioned by Allah.
In such a gathering.
It's a profound reward.
And Ibn Taymiyyah found so much contentment
In his seclusion with Allah.
that he said no worldly wealth could compensate for it. He said, Uyusiya, Susiya Ishe Asiya. What can my enemies do to me? My paradise and my garden are in my heart.
So dhikr creates a paradise within the heart.
It does a paradise of intimacy with Allah.
That's beautiful.
And it's something we can all attain through dhikr.
And our sources also mention finding ease and facilitation.
in difficult situations.
Through istikhar and salat ala nabi.
Seeking forgiveness and blessings upon the Prophet. PBUH.
So these acts have practical benefits
They do.
in our daily lives.
Absolutely.
Dhikr relieves distress,
Dispels worries.
overcomes obstacles,
And provides protection.
and the Hadith Qudsi states,
Yeah. You see a sexy shikasiyahas.
I am as my servant thinks of me, and I am with him when he remembers me.
And esilkake, I am with my servant as long as he remembers me, and his lips move for me.
So Allah's presence is with the one who remembers him.
Always.
That's so comforting.
It is a beautiful promise.
And there's a hadith that says that Allah boasts about those engaged in dhikr.
To the angels.
Wow.
It shows how highly he regards those who remember him.
It's an honor
It is.
to be engaged in such an act.
And another hadith calls dhikr the best of deeds,
Even better than spending gold in charity.
or fighting in battle.
So its value is immense.
It is.
Now, we've talked about the spiritual and emotional benefits, but there's also a surprising physical benefit.
Oh, yeah.
Strength.
Dhikr can actually strengthen the body.
That's fascinating.
It is.
How so?
Well, consider the advice given to Fatima
Okay.
about reciting tasbih, tamid, and takbir before sleep.
Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar.
Yeah, the Prophet, PBUH, told her it was better than having a servant.
Wow.
And Ibn Taymiyyah also observed this energizing power of dhikr.
So it's a holistic strengthening.
It is not just the soul, but the body, too.
And dhikr helps us manage our time,
By focusing the mind.
protects the heart from distractions, and resolves feelings of helplessness.
By connecting us to Allah.
So it gives us clarity and purpose
And motivates us.
to fulfill our responsibilities.
His task.
And dhikr is also protection,
Against calamities.
both worldly and otherworldly.
Shaitan, magic, envy.
And the Quran says,
Yes.
and whoever turns away from the remembrance of the most merciful, we appoint for him a devil, and he is a companion for him.
So neglecting remembrance makes us vulnerable.
It does.
And dhikr is like a fortress.
Against shaitan.
We should seek Allah's protection through dhikr.
When leaving and entering our homes.
Before eating and sleeping.
When interacting with our families.
So it's about creating a shield of remembrance.
Around our lives.
And there's the hadith about shaitan tying knots.
On the head of a sleeping person.
And the remedy
is dhikru wudu.
and salah. So it's a constant battle.
Against spiritual lethargy.
And the Prophet, PBUH, said,
I cut out say.
let your tongue remain moist with the remembrance of Allah.
So dhikr makes other acts of worship easier.
It does. It keeps us connected.
And Ibn Taymiyyah
Yeah.
engaged in prolonged dhikr after Fajr.
He considered it his spiritual nourishment.
Wow, so it's like fuel for the day.
It is.
And the Quran connects dhikr to strength.
He says, su and increase you in strength added to your strength.
And just like prayer deters from immorality and evil,
Dhikr also safeguards us from sin.
the Quran says, Dia san saya.
And the remembrance of Allah is greater
So dhikr strengthens our resolve.
against wrongdoing.
And the contrast
Between those who recite morning and evening adhkar
and those who don't,
is really stark.
it shows how much we miss out.
By neglecting these practices.
It's like going out into the world unprotected.
Exactly.
And it's not just about reciting the words,
No, we need to understand their meanings.
so we can experience a deeper connection. Let's talk about the meanings of some of these key adhkar.
Okay.
Subhanallah, for example,
Subhanallah means exalting Allah.
declaring his perfection.
Free from any deficiency or flaw.
And this phrase is beloved to Allah,
It is.
carries weight on the scale of deeds, is the prayer of all creation.
And Prophet Nuh, AS, said it's a key to attaining provision.
Wow. And its value surpasses the kingdom of Prophet Sulaiman. Yes.
It does.
That's incredible.
It is such a short phrase, but so profound.
And Alhamdulillah,
Alhamdulillah is praise and thanks to Allah.
offered with love.
Yeah, hamd, not just mad.
Hamd is praise that comes from the heart.
Exactly.
And we have countless blessings to be grateful for.
Even the ability to say Alhamdulillah is a blessing.
And the Quran links hamd to Allah's mercy.
It does.
What about Allahu Akbar?
Allahu Akbar declares Allah's greatness.
Greater than our fears and worries.
And our imagination.
The Prophet, PBUH, had a powerful reaction to this phrase.
He did.
So it's a reminder of Allah's ultimate power.
Yeah. He's beyond our comprehension.
And La ilaha illallah.
La ilaha illallah means there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah.
It signifies submission to Him alone,
It's the foundation of our faith.
the core of our belief.
Exactly.
And finally, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah.
La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah means there is no power or ability to change from evil or attain good except through Allah,
It's a treasure from paradise.
according to a hadith.
So it highlights our reliance on Allah.
Our complete dependence on Him.
And there's also Hasbi Allahu wa ni'mal wakil.
Right.
Sufficient for us is Allah, and He is the best disposer of affairs.
Powerful words of reliance and trust.
The Prophet Ibrahim, A.S., said them when he was thrown into the fire.
And the companions recited them after Uhud.
It's a declaration of complete trust in Allah
Yeah, trusting in His plan and protection.
and seeking forgiveness, istighfar.
Istighfar is so important.
The Prophet, PBUH, said it opens doors,
Eases difficulties.
brings provision,
And there's that amazing story of Al-Hasan al-Basri.
giving advice based on Surah Nur
Yeah, about the power of istighfar.
to bring rain, wealth, and children
And even a personal story of overcoming barrenness.
through istighfar
It's a truly powerful act.
and sending blessings upon the Prophet, PBUH,
Salat al-Nabi.
brings us his intercession and forgiveness.
And the Prophet, PBUH, said the one who sends the most blessings upon him.
We'll be closest to him on the day of judgment.
It's an act of love and connection.
All of these practices require effort.
Yeah, patience and perseverance.
We need to find delight in them.
And recognize the good behind them
And remember, knowledge of dhikr and dua.
is something we learn.
We can use resources like His Muslim
And other authentic collections.
to learn and incorporate dhikr into our lives.
Exactly.
So it's a lifelong journey of learning and application.
It is.
And as we conclude this deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
I encourage everyone to revisit this discussion,
And the whole series.
to really understand and apply these concepts.
Especially our earlier discussion on prayer.
It's a continuous journey of improving our worship
And deepening our connection with Allah.
through prayer supplication.
Quran and, of course, Dhikr.
It's a commitment we make with sincerity and yearning.
May Allah bless these gatherings.
Benefit the listeners.
Accept our efforts.
Grant us sincerity,
Make our worship easy.
especially dhikr,
Shukr, gratitude.
and husni ibadah, excellent worship.
And may His peace and blessings be upon Prophet Muhammad, PBUH.
Ameen.